This is the Lean Builders Hoots on the Ground podcast with absolutely, positively no bullshito. Join us as we dig into exactly what lean construction is and how we can use these concepts and strategies in the field. This podcast will be different as we journey to job sites and mine the minds of lean builders, all in effort to pass forward building knowledge from those who have put their time in to learn a better way. Because that's just what lean builders do.
I firmly believe in the lean principles. But like I said, this is what I've always done. I missed my opportunity. This is how I've always ran a job. I've been in the trades 46, 47 years.
Love it.
I've been a superintendent for 40 of those years. And I've been a general superintendent for 36 of those years. But I came up in the golden age where most of the business owners were ex-tradesmen, and they trained us. They taught us the business, and they taught us how to manage our work, manage our people. But also, when I made the transition from into the GC from a subcontractor, I was general superintendent for half of the state of Texas. And so I had to go to all the sub meetings, and I got to meet every superintendent that you can imagine, the good, the bad, the ugly. So the benefit from there was I could always look back and see which superintendent, his style of running jobs that were good jobs. And what I soon realized is the guys that were the old school, stand on the front porch and scream and holler and cuss at you, their jobs were always behind because they were dictators. But the guys that would communicate with you, their jobs always went well. So when I made the transition, superintendent that took me under wing was the superintendent that I thought was God. Best superintendent, his jobs, everybody wanted to work on his jobs.
Who is
And
this?
Keith Patterson with Waco Construction. And Keith took me under wing and he taught me a lot. But because of what I had seen from other superintendents, I seen things that were good from other guys. And my goal was to be like Keith Patterson. And then one day I realized I'm better than Keith because I'm Keith plus all the other good points. So it benefited me. And then Waco Construction, there'll never be another company like it. Mr. Brownfield, who owned the company, unfortunately passed away here about 45 years ago. Very good construction guy, but he invested in his people and personally invested. He'd come out to the job sites and sit down in your office and spend 2 hours talking to you. And you didn't really realize you was learning a lesson at that time, but we all did. And all the superintendents that work for that company have moved on and been very successful. And that's just how we manage work. And the big token today is the balance between personal life and your work life. But as you and I was talking the other day, this business is kind of like a badge of honor. Oh, yeah, man, 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. That's a cultural deal. That was just what was expected. And the older guys are the guys that you're going to have a hard time changing that culture because it's a badge of honor. Oh, yeah, we work 14, 16 hours a day. You know, why? My jobs, we work 5 days a week, 4 tens and 8. And I finish on time. I've never, ever in my career not finished a job on time. As I tell my boss, I'm the laziest employee you have in this company. Yeah. But, you know,
There you have it. There you have it, folks. Without further ado, I want to introduce the Lean Builder Nation to Mr. Carey George. I guess, Carey, I love it. I love when a superintendent comes on here and doesn't need any introduction and you just take the platform and run, man, because that's what it's about. So I guess dive in. You answered a little bit of my first question of who is Carey George, but could you dive in a little deeper? Maybe let us into who really is Carey?
construction, I had no affiliation. My dad was professional military. I got out of high school, Really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went and talked to my dad about going into the service. He said, unless we have another major war, you can go in as an enlisted guy, spend your 20 years, but you really don't retire. You'll have supplemental income. He said, if you want to make a career out of it, go to college. And he said, I would go to nursing school. Get out of nursing school 2 years, get your RN, go into the Navy, you can write your ticket. So I went to nursing school, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Yeah, of course, by the time I got out of that, going into the military was the last thing at that point. So I went to work for University of Texas Health and Research and worked there about 8 months. And I was, just an old country boy, but I was a man in a woman's world. And I was good at my job, but it was not a very pleasant work environment. So one day I just said, I'm going to do something else. Walked out on the job site and hired on as a laborer for a drywall contractor and stayed with that company almost 20 years and then switched over to the GC side. It's been a great career. I have built some magnificent buildings, traveled all over the country, but the best part of it is you meet the best people in the world. I have made friends every job. There's 2 or 3 guys that become lifelong friends. You stay in touch. They come see you. You go see them. And that's what keeps me coming back. Tried to retire once. I'm not geared for retirement. I've got to wake up every day with a purpose. And I have fun doing it. And I got great people. I build good teams, and we become family. And just like on all my job trailers, I've got a poster that's when you first walk in. And basically what it says is it talks about you better love the people you work with. Because I spend more time with these people than I do with my wife. And I love my wife. Been together 40 years.
Dang.
It's you got to build that relationship. And that's what this business is about. But it's not just with the clients. It's the relationships with your co-workers, the relationships and respect for your subcontractor base. And then my philosophy has always been, if my subs make money, I have always made money. I don't count my nickels and dimes. I take care of my subs. And when the subs are making money, I have always made money. And most people don't look at it. They look at beating subs up to make money, and they're doing it wrong.
Man, Carey, you are preaching to my heart right now. I can't maintain myself over here because you're talking about the people side of things, the relationship side of things, building trust, having transparency, allowing folks to see that you're a human, to live in the real time and make mistakes and learn as a team. Like all of that is amazing. Have you seen or heard of this book right here? Lean and Love.
I don't think so.
This is written by some of your fellow Texans here. Miss Jen Lacey and Jesse Hernandez wrote this book. Jen's a director of lean for Robbins and Morton, and Jesse's like me, just like a lean coach, trying to make a difference in an industry that needs us. And they wrote this book based on some live streams they were having. And are you familiar with the term 5S?
Mm.
Again, it comes from Japanese. There's 5 S's: sort, set in order, sweep, standardize, and sustain. And so they wrote how the 5 S's apply to relationships. And one of the main takeaways that I had is exactly what you just said. It's relationships are everywhere. You spend more time at work than you do at home, and yet you create relationships at home that mean the most to you. And so why are you not doing the same thing inside the gate as you are outside the gate?
Let me get my guys in here. Hey,
Yeah,
guys,
please.
y'all come in here. I'm going to introduce you to
Oh, yeah.
some of the best people in the world.
Hell yeah. Bring
Come
it.
on, Jason.
Yeah.
All right, let me introduce you to Miss Jennifer.
Hey, Miss Jennifer.
She is the one that keeps the glue, and we're all family. And this is a whole new crew. This is Jason.
Hey, Jason. What's up, man?
And, my APM, and then Mr. Corey. He is my superintendent on this project. Corey's
Mr.
been
Corey.
with me, what, 6, 8 months? 9 months. Corey just came into the general contracting side. He came out of the sub-market. Jennifer, her background, she had worked in the ready-mix business, concrete, but never really on the GC side. And Jason's how long you been out of school now?
5 years now.
5 years. He's been with us, what, a year now almost?
About 8-9 months.
Yeah. And then I've got a new PM that's been with us now, what, a month? Yeah. So it's a whole new team, but we're efficient, we're productive, and we're all good friends.
That's amazing. So Jason, what kind of things are you doing to help build the team?
Keeping that stress off of Carey for sure.
How do you do that?
Helping him out, and whatever he needs, he got me. I'm here for him. Keep the project rolling.
Absolutely. What about you, Corey? What's the best thing about BE&K so far?
Oh, there's too much list, but no, it's Carey's known him for about 5 or 6 years, been waiting that long to go to work for him, and finally got the opportunity, so I jumped at it. I loved every bit of it. I'm glad I made that decision. Learned
That's
a lot.
awesome.
It's been fun so far.
Heck yeah. Is Miss Jennifer still with us?
She's
Yes,
over here.
I'm sorry.
hiding.
I was.
Oh, you're good. Miss
Doing
Jennifer, what are y'all building out there?
We're building a lab for Bell Textron here in Arlington.
Gotcha. Very cool. What's the biggest challenge with Carey, Miss Jennifer?
Challenge. Oh, honestly, there's really no challenge. And maybe the challenge would be on my end, my shortcomings of not knowing as much as I wish I knew, because he's got 46, 40, whatever, all these years of experience, and he knows it. And I wish I just had a quarter of it. And just to boot, there's 3 great men in my life. One is my dad. One is a mentor that I used to know about 20 years ago, and God bless him, he's not here anymore. And the third one is right here, Carey.
Wow.
Swear to God. Swear to
Amazing.
God.
Appreciate that.
Holy cow. You're going to make me tear up.
That's real talk too.
And this is a new team. I mean, Jennifer's got longevity here because Jason just came up here, 6 months ago? Yeah, Corey's been here 8 months. Jennifer's been here almost a year. I've got a new PM that's been here a month. When you interview people, when I interview people, it's a personal conversation because you have to mix, you have to gel, and you just got to be able to have that open communication. And I don't look at resumes because I always said, who's going to put the truth on a resume? They're always a little perfumed up, and you don't know until you set them in a chair. But I've been pretty lucky. Like I said, this team right here, I put them up against anybody.
Well, that's where it's at, right? It's total participation. It's knowing that we're all in it for the same reason, to get a job done, turn a lab over for its intended purpose, because you're making a difference in the world. So I love the fact that you brought the team in. It was such a pleasure to meet y'all.
Well, it's all about trust too, because I've got other projects. So I'm not on this job all the time. But when I leave here, I don't have to worry about nothing.
Well,
And
tell me more about that trust word, because I've actually got a presentation tomorrow with the Lean Construction blog. And so I got to fair warn you, anything you say can and use might be used in that
That's right.
presentation. But
I'm going to give you, this is probably going to be a new one for you.
okay.
Have you ever heard the DOA principle of business?
I don't believe so. No, sir.
This is a Carey George original.
Okay.
And this is what I teach my people. Everybody wants to be in a position to be the boss or the supervisor, and because it usually means more money, and that's what they're thinking about. They don't realize what the true responsibilities. Being the boss is delegating. Anybody can delegate. I've got a 5-year-old granddaughter that is a champion delegator. But everybody, no matter what position you hold, can delegate. And they think that's what being a boss is. The O part is observation. Once you delegate something, did you make the observation that it was done properly, what you delegated? And that's the communication. Explaining what your expectation is when you delegate something, then you taking the accountability to make the observation that what you delegated was done. Where most managers fail is the A part, which is the assessment. So once it was delegated, once you observed it being done, did you go out and make the assessment that it was done properly? Most people fail to do that. That's why you have big punch lists. I don't have punch lists. But by practicing that principle is where you build trust. Because the point will come that I know that if I tell Jennifer, if I tell Corey to do something, I don't have to go out there and make sure they're doing it. I don't have to go out there and make an assessment on everything they've done. I have better things to do to spend my time on. So that's where you build the trust factor. You have to do it on the front side, and then you have to do it some as you go, just to keep people honest to know that you're going to be checking on them. But when you go out there and you make an observation, you make the assessment, it was done exactly like you asked them to do it, or you explained it, that principle will build a team. And when they know that you trust them and you build that relationship, they're not going to let you down. But they also understand I am only as good, and this is what I preach every morning to the tradesmen out here when we do our stretch and flex and we have our safety talks. My success on this project depends on every individual out here on this job. So for me to be successful, I have to make sure they're successful. And the same thing with my crew here. I'm here to support, to make sure that they have what they need to do their job properly. But we're all affected by the actions of each other. And that's just as simple as it is.
Yeah, as you're talking about the DOA concept, in the lean world, they actually have something called PDCA. Have you heard of that before?
No.
So it reminds me very much of what you're talking about. That concept is more plan, do, check, act. And so you're going to plan what you're going to do, then you're going to do it, and then you're going to check to see if it's been done the way you planned it. And then you're going to act or adjust according to how you're going to plan it better next time. And so it's a repetitive cycle, like you said, that helps build teams. And you've got just fireworks exploding in my head over here because you're taking me down a road of teamwork and development. And it's refreshing to hear because too often we get lost in the work and the process and we forget about the people and how important the people are. And two, as you go and you start developing that trust, and as you delegate, right? We did a podcast before on the 5 levels of delegation, where it's okay, if I'm using a level like Carey, if I'm telling you level 1 delegation and I'm telling you to go get some rental equipment, that means I'm going to tell you who to call, when to call, how many to call, exactly what the lifts we need, versus maybe a level 5 delegation is hey, I just want you to go get lifts for that project. So then you have to go figure out what kind of lifts those are. You have to figure out who you're going to call, making sure that you're very clear with how the levels that you delegate. And then the observation part is so key because too often we listen to respond without listening to understand. We just want to speak or we just want to tell somebody how to do something and we don't ask them the questions to get them there so that they learn within the process. And I think that's key, that observation before we obsess, right? Because those are 2 totally different things. Like you have to objectively look at a situation before you subjectively look at that situation. And so, man, you've got just my mind exploding with ideas over here. Take me through some of the other lean tools you use on the job. You were mentioning a few before I hit the recording, but what
like I said, every job's different. I'll give you a prime example. Job we did in Oklahoma City, all new trade base, no relationships, and it was very tight, about $74 million job, start to finish, 10 months. And they said, yeah. And they said, you can't do it. And I said, yeah, we can do it, but you're going to have to listen. Instead of having a huddle every morning, what we would do is we'd walk the job with all the trade foremen. I said, all right, I need a crew here. I need a crew here. I need you here. he's going to finish. So we did our huddle kind of as a walk in motion. But my whole deal is start and finish. And the example I'll use, because the electrical contractor on that job, the president of the company at the end of the job came out and it made me feel good. He said, you have totally changed our philosophy on how we install work. And so I said, look, here's the typical electrical installation. And they were a union contractor. I says, you got a guy over here. All he's doing is going through and screwing the boxes on the studs. And he does half a wing the first day. I said, the next day, you've got another crew of guys that they come through with a pipe rack and they're bending 90s and they're just putting the stub ups and clamping them to the studs. And he's following the guy putting the boxes on. I said, so then the next day, you've got guys that are coming in, they're hanging a J box off an all thread, and they're running a piece of pipe from there to the J box. Then the next day, you got guys come through, they pull the wire. I said, so you're taking a whole week to get this one wing just for your work, and nobody else can do anything. So what I want you to do is I want you to walk in this room, put your boxes, put your conduit, hang your J box, pull your wire, and walk out of this room. And at the end of the day, if you've got 5 rooms completed, tomorrow I'll have the sheetrocker in here sheetrocking. And then the next thing was then the duct guy. I said, look, you want to come in and hang your main trunk lines, then you want somebody to come through and put your spinners in. I said, when you walk in this room, I want everything. And you can put your flex on. Just don't put your grill on. But you can tie your flex up. You never come back until that ceiling grid's in. And so that's sometimes you got to physically go out and walk them through it. You have to change the philosophy of how they were taught to do it. But that's how you build $74 million worth of work in 10 months.
Yeah, you focus on flow. Absolutely. I'll tell you, everything that you're describing right now is Little's Law. It's a production law that tells us it's 3 things. So Little's Law tells us work in small batches, finish as you go, and limit your work in progress. Don't get too much stuff going on where you can't focus on any one thing. And I always tell teams, stop starting and start finishing. And if we can do that, we're going to be so much better off in construction, because our natural tendency is to run and just start everything. But what that does is creates chaos for our admin teams, for the teams in the field. And now we're managing problems that aren't really on the critical flow, but we got it in front of the architect and they really don't matter for 3 weeks. It just drives chaos. And having buffers, right, the appropriate workable backlog stuff that I can do that won't affect in the long run is critical. Man, you're getting me. Yeah, go, baby. What else you got?
The biggest issue in the field is out of sequence work. Kills out of sequence work. And I can appreciate a superintendent, something didn't come in and he's still trying to keep work going. And I even have the same discussions with some of my executives. How come you're not doing this? You can go ahead and do this. Yeah, but if I do that, then I've got to do this, and I'm probably going to damage some of this. And so out of sequence work, it's hard to sit here and give up a couple of days waiting on something, but people never look at what the impact is. Yeah, you put something in, but something you could have done in 3 days now takes you a week and a half because you've impeded the access. And that's the biggest thing I deal with is out of sequence work. And I tell my subs, we're not going to get ahead of the wagon. And a prime example on this job, very specific discussion with my electrician. I said, look, all these walls are a class 5 finish to the deck. It's a DCMA job. And I said, they got to be painted flat black. So we cannot put anything on the walls until I get these walls finished. So I had went to another project, came back a few days later. Well, guess what? 4-inch rigid conduit run right down the hallway. And I just went and found the foreman. I said, hey, we had this discussion. I needed something to do. I said, well, you've got something to do now because you can take it all down. Because we very specific, and I explained to him why. Again. And he said, it's already up there. I said, but you was told not to. I said, so let's make it real simple. Either you take it down where you can reuse it, or I'll take it down and you'll probably have to throw it in the trash. So they took it down, but he learned a lesson from it. Great foreman, but gung-ho, we've all been there. But out of sequence work will kill a job faster than anything.
I agree 100%. It creates other wastes, right? It creates defects, and then it creates wasted movement, waiting, and yeah, it's troublesome. What things are you doing to avoid that? Like, how do you get out in front of that on project sites? You mentioned earlier one thing that I actually call stoplight scheduling. Maybe you can take us through that, some of the other things that you're doing on the job that eliminate those type of wastes.
It starts from the very start of the job. Yeah, what we do. Well, the business, you're doing a preliminary schedule that you're, giving to the client, and then you're trying to get buyout contracts. So that schedule is usually what's attached to the contract. I throw that schedule in the trash. But before we ever start the project, I have what I call a kickoff meeting, partner session, whatever you want to call it. First day, introductions, protocols, processes, expectations, and basically how I run the job and the do's and the don'ts. And I'm not I'm not a screamer or holler. I'm not a cussing guy. I'm just very factual, and I don't put up with nothing. And if you can't play in the sandbox, I just take you out of the sandbox and put somebody else in your place. So the second day, though, is we do our pool schedule. And I've been doing it long enough. I know about what the timelines are. So I build a schedule and we start going through it. And of course, the plumber says, oh man, you only got me down for 20 days. I need 30 days. And I said, you're supposed to be the best plumber in town. We are. I said, the worst plumber I ever had in my life probably could have done it in 15 days. All right, I can do it in 15 days. But the commitment comes from them. And then when that schedule is finally done, I take that schedule and everybody signs the back of it. And when the schedules change, every week you update them. The weather sets you back. Some weeks you pick up some time. Next week you lose a day or two. But most subcontractors, because of most GCs, most superintendents never update a schedule. You can take the first week of that job and 3 months into it, they ain't changed the date, nothing. They're either going to show something's behind or something, but they've never made any sequence adjustments. And that's the other thing is flexibility, is being able to look far enough ahead to see that there's going to be a roadblock. Or maybe some material didn't come in, maybe some weather impacts. You have to have flexibility to change your workflow and change your sequence in the proper sequence. But you always keep moving forward in sequence. And you're training your subs as well. And by the time you get this job's 12-month job, 4 months into it, the subs are believing what you're preaching. Everybody's different. Like I said, sometimes, like we do stretch and flex and have our safety talk. Sometimes we'll just huddle out there in the parking lot and say, okay, hey, I need you to get this done first, this, Mr. Electrician. And this is a small job. It works. And like I said, when we really get into some big scheduling or some scheduling issues, we got all the boards on the wall. I'm not big, and maybe because I've never seen it work. The Post-its on the raceways don't work for me. And maybe it's just because I haven't been showed why, but I've tried it. I don't buy into it. Now, there's some people who swear by it, but
you do visualize your schedule on the wall, you told me, right?
Oh, yeah.
How do you do that?
Like I said, I've got a 4-week grid, and you run from whatever date for 4 weeks. And then when I update my primary schedule, I'll do a 4-week look ahead on that. And then we'll take that, because the other thing is, you hand most of these guys a P6 schedule, they're not going to tell you they don't understand it. It goes right over their head. But I use just a box schedule. It's just a grid. It's got your scope of work, trade, dates, and then we color code it. Green, your start dates here. Blue is completion dates. You got 8 days. And then you got to do your production trends. So within 2 days, either me or Corey's went out there and said, okay, these guys had 5 days to hang 500 sheets of rock, and they've hung 250 in 2 days. So they're ahead of the production curve.
So they're green.
They're in the green. But on the second day, if they only hung 150, they're in the yellow. By the third or fourth day, they're orange, and then if they don't pick it back up, they're red. And so they can't argue with you. So it's one or two things. Extra hours, which we don't work. Like I said, we're lazy out here. So you need some additional sheetrockers. You need a couple more crews out here. And most superintendents, oh, you need more guys. You need more guys. You have to be able to sit down with a production trend and say, look, guys, it's real simple. You've got this many units of work, this many days, this many units per day, and you're not making those units. So you either have to maximize your crew, and when you put it on paper like that, they can't argue with you.
Yeah, it's facts. Like you said, it's data.
It's kind of like balancing your checkbook, you know. But the other thing is, you don't have to get into the weeds. You can walk out there and say, okay, like on this job, it's got big old long hallways in it. That's 400 foot. So they're supposed to have both sides of this wall done in X amount of days. You can just count how many lineal feet per day they're doing. So it doesn't take that long to just walk the job and see what the production is. And like I said, I learned the jobs when I was coming up, the superintendents that did that, their jobs were always smooth. The guys that just cracked the whip, screamed and hollered, they never knew where their job was at.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it. And I believe you're probably already doing the Post-it notes with what you're explaining. You're just doing it in a different format. And the whole intention is to just track production and to be able to take a scope and realize on Monday that they're not going to finish on Friday, not realize on Saturday that they didn't finish on Friday. And I really like where you're at. Is it possible to get a picture of that we could flash up here?
Yeah, let me see.
We don't have to do it right now, but when you get a second, if you think about it.
Hey, Gord, do me a favor. Take a picture of those boards.
I love it.
But like submittal boards, we got our parking lot and our issue board, but the schedule board is the key. The submittal board and the RFI board on the front side of the job, we track that hard, especially with the market, with procurement being what it is right now. Is it coming? Yeah, that's like there's 2 pet peeves that my people will tell you. I don't want to hear I emailed it, and I don't want to hear the word multitasking. But
on that note, I'll let you finish what you're doing before we proceed.
But when I hired Jennifer, I said, let me explain multitasking in my world. If I walk into my desk and I've got a stack of change orders, submittals, whatever it is, I pick one up, I get started on it, and I will get interrupted. I'll get a phone call, somebody will walk in, I put it back on the stack. Then later on, I pick it up. So at the end of the day, if I finished 2 change orders or whatever, I multitask because I completed 2 tasks. But most people start multiple things and never finish anything. And then my biggest one is, how many times have you walked in and asked somebody, hey, did you talk to the flooring contractor? Oh, yeah, I emailed him yesterday. Well, have you heard back from him? Well, no, I emailed him. I said, so now, I said, the only email I want to see from you is a confirming email that per our phone conversation this morning, you will have a crew on site tomorrow. And it takes a few stern conversations, but I guarantee Jason, Corey, and Jennifer, that's the emails that they send now per our phone conversation. It's pretty simple. Let me see if I can get this to you. Share. Technical deal. Here we go. All right. Okay, phone number 704-230-9. All right, it should be coming to you.
I appreciate that, and I didn't interrupt you intentionally. I'll tell you, so science has your back, and you can use this. There was a study done at, I want to say it was like University of California at Irvine, and they said when somebody's interrupted on something, it takes an average of 23 minutes to get back in the saddle to the point where you were.
Really?
Yes.
I don't doubt
A
it.
scientific study that's got your back there, and I love how you just took one of my questions right away. Pet peeves is a big thing of mine, and I always tell people, wouldn't it be amazing if this thing you could actually call people on it and talk to them instead of like just the Twitter thumbs or fingers all day long?
I've been doing it long enough where, yeah, we had an old rotary dial phone with a bell on the outside of the trailer. And most of the time when the phone rang, by the time you got to the trailer, they'd hung up and we didn't have caller ID. And then, of course, the age of pagers, we always had about $10 worth of quarters in your truck. And sometimes I think the age of electronic communication has complicated the jobs more. Everything's electronic. I'm still a paper guy. I like walking to a file cabinet, pulling out a submittal, flipping through and finding what I need. Because the IT guys, that's what they do. But just this morning, we're looking for a piece of information. We use Procore. I said, just go get the binder. It took me about 2 seconds to open the binder up and find what they'd been looking for, probably for 10 minutes. But when you add that up in days' time, a week's time, and the year's time, how much time we spend looking for something in a folder or an email is just, I mean, it has its advantages, but it has weakened the communication skills. There's nothing like looking somebody in the eye and having a conversation. It's that personal touch. An email is just, it's not very personal.
I bet when somebody tells you it's on the share drive or it's on Procore, I bet that doesn't go very far, does it?
No, no. And the thing is, Paul, our PM, we got some other work that we're been awarded and we're trying to get started. And he asked me where the plans were at. I said, they're in the pre-con section. I said, but when you opened it up, there's a section, there's a file there that says specifications and drawings. But he says, yeah, but there's nothing in there. I said, I know. You have to go down to this, which makes no rhyme or reason, but the guys in pre-con, for them, it was probably an accessibility deal where they could, is one file grab all. If everybody's not on the same page of where you filed it, and but it's good for with me. Procore is more of a document vault. We still do the paper on my jobs. We scan it into Procore, and we use a lot of their electronic aspects too. But I came up still think Excel was the best tracking tool in the world because you can do so much with it if you know how to use it. But what works for me doesn't work for everybody else. So you have to figure out what works, and then you have to be flexible enough because, like I said, it'll change. And I've worked all over the country, so demographics, I'll give you a prime example. Like I said, I'm just an old Texas country boy. Can you imagine me working in Bethesda, Maryland? but I did. And I had to make some adjustments as well because it's a demographic change. So you have to be flexible in this business, but you have to have people skills. And that's what most superintendents do not have, good people skills. And people skills can be taught, but nobody teaches it. Some people are just born with the gift of gab. I never meet a stranger. I don't have any problem talking in front of people, large crowds, but there's some people that just don't. I've got superintendents don't even like doing sub meetings, and they just don't feel comfortable. And that's a confidence deal. So you have to build upon that, and you have to be able to handle people different. Some people you can have a stern conversation, they take it, but you have some guys you talk a little bit on a higher level, and first thing you know, they want to get combative. Then you got to know how to diffuse that. And then you have to build their confidence in you. And it's for me, what works as a superintendent, it's always easy to call a project manager or to walk out there in the field and chew on somebody because they did something wrong. Very seldom do you see, when people have done a good job, that they get commended in front of their peers. That's one thing on our jobs we do. If we're in a sub meeting and there's a particular foreman that has just done an outstanding job, he's going to get recognized. Then the competition is set. The guy sitting next to him, he wants to be the guy next week. And then you get added value. You ask them to do something that most times I ain't got time to do it. Yes, sir. What do you need? So it's people skills. And I'm just a horse trader.
When or how did you learn that people didn't think like you?
I guess probably my dad. My dad was a pretty wise man. Matter of fact, he was my hero.
Why?
But my dad traveled around the world, no telling how many times, professional military guy. But he always told me, he said, we're all the same, no matter what color your skin, no matter what your nationality, we're all the same, but we all have different personalities. And he said, to be successful in this world, you have to be able to bend and see the good and just not pay attention. It's like my wife. There's things that if I really thought about it, I'd probably pack my suitcase and leave. But for all those qualities that I don't like, 100-fold, there's 100 things that make her special. So you have to be able to find everybody. We got something in common. And when I came to work for BE&K, one thing that I do, and I've always done it, is safety is really big for me. And greatest accomplishment so far in my business or my trade, I have never had a lost time injury. I've had one recordable in my career. So safety is truly a value. But I always did picture boards. I'd say, hey guys, what's important to you? Bring me a picture. And now we do it now as as a company wide, but I started it. And it's like, what do you do that for? I said, look at that board and tell me what you see, all different nationalities. But really look at the pictures. And what you're going to see is we all have the same common interest. Our grandkids, our kids, our husbands, our wives, our hobbies, hunting, fishing, motorcycles. And so it builds a team. And I was doing a job in South Texas, and this is a good story. And I can't remember the guy's names, but I had this young Hispanic kid, and he was into hot rods, restoring cars. He had this picture of him. He had I think it was a 72 Chevy SS Chevelle that he wasn't quite finished with, but it was really a nice piece of automotive work that he had totally restored. And from body work to painting it, the whole 9 yards. I had some pipe fitters come in, and one of the guys came in was an old biker guy, old hardy guy with the leather vest and the whole 9 yards. And he's a white dude. And so one day they're out there and he's seen that Chevelle, and hey man, come here. that year. So him and this guy, because this guy was in the Chevelles too, they got to be best friends.
Wow.
And the guy in San Antonio, he had a piece of chrome that this kid needed to finish his car. And then this kid was going to San Antonio. They became good friends. They had common interest, but it also broke that racial barrier to some degree. That here's a young 20-year-old Hispanic kid, and this guy was probably in his late 40s, but they had so much in common. And that's what does the same thing on this job, that especially in our society today. It's unfortunate, but yeah, that's how you build teams. And I learned that from my dad. My dad taught me a lot. He's in the service, and like he always told me, he said, son, he said, there's two facts in life. He said, in the throes of combat, there's no racism and there's no atheist. He said, when you're in the throes of battle, he said, you don't care what the guy protecting your back, what color his skin is. And he said, there's no atheist. He said, everybody believes in God.
What I'm pulling from what you're saying is we're all human beings. We all need to have affection for one another and understand that, hey, each one of us can bring value in a different way. And when we realize that and we're able to extract the humanness out of people, then they just want to do their best job for the team and they want to give their all for a team and they feel connected and they feel like they matter to the project. And that's somewhere that I want to be. That if I've got a leader creating an environment where it's exciting to go to work and I'm learning when I'm at work and I want to be there, that is a whole nother level of trust and team building right there that I don't think many get to. They say there's 4 stages in building a team. It's forming, storming, norming, and performing. And it's in that order too, right? Because as you're starting to form, it's like everybody's this honeymoon. Okay, everything's great. But inevitably there's some storming that goes on. There's some kind of fighting or positioning for the quote unquote totem pole. But then you get into this kind of norming where everybody understands who's going to make what decisions, and then you can really start to perform. I love where you're at. I love your style too. You got it, man. People are everything. The learning doesn't always have to be technical. Learning can be about people, and then that's when you figure out what motivates them. So,
and everybody's motivated by different things.
Yeah,
but it's real simple. Everybody wants to be part of something. Everybody. And you have to wake up every day with a purpose. And what happens in today's society is every generation wants the next generation to be better off than they were. So we get to a level where, like, my kids were spoiled, rotten, but they understood you got what you worked for. There was rewards. And so even out here, I think it was last week, you're talking about value. And I said, and September is Suicide Awareness Month. And so that's been part of our topics because the construction industry, out of all professions, has the highest suicide.
You're 5 times more likely to die by suicide than any other hazard on a job site.
Exactly.
We know how dangerous those sites are too. That's an outstanding statistic.
The first conversation I had, I said, okay, guys, here we are in age scale. I'm 66. I've been doing it a long time. And here's a young man over here. How long you been doing this? Oh, 2 years. I said, okay. I said, I'm supposed to be the head guy out here. So I'm supposed to be the most valuable guy on the job out here because I make it happen. No. Young man, you're just as valuable on this job. So what I did is I said, I took a $20 bill out of my pocket. I said, everybody see this? How much is that worth? $20. I wadded it up. I said, still worth 20? Yeah. I said, okay. Well, that's how we are. Well, there's days we just get beat up. Then I threw it down in the dirt and I stomped on it and picked it up and it's dusty and I shook it off. And then I said, and there's days we get a little dirt on us. Still worth $20. Then I took it and I tore it. And I said, in life, you're going to get beat up, dirty, and torn. but you're still worth $20. Your value never changes. And I said, so never sell yourself short. And I said, your goal needs to be today, you're 20. Tomorrow, you want to be 25. That's how you climb the ladder. But never let anybody sell you short. Just because you're the lowest paid on the crew doesn't mean that you bring no value. And I had a lot of guys after that morning come up and said, man, that was really a good message. I said, that's the truth. I said, you're a mechanic, you're a licensed plumber. But without that kid over there running out there and hooking and hauling all that pipe in here and going and getting this for you, you wouldn't be what you are today. And you used to be where he's at. You're right. So, like I said, biggest thing in this business is how you treat people.
Man, that's amazing. And I just pinned what it is about your name. You know the monkey Curious George?
Yeah.
Man, you make me so curious when you talk. You engage me, and I'm like hanging on every single word. I love the story. So is it okay that I call you Curious George? Is that okay?
I've been called that before.
I like it, man, because it's bring on this kind of persona of, oh boy, here's another typical superintendent. And then the words that come out of your mouth are like, holy cow, he gets it. Like was there ever a point in your career where you were that dictator superintendent?
No.
Really?
No.
You've always been collaborative?
I've always been pretty level-headed. But sometimes the disadvantage of that is I don't let stuff build up, but it really takes a lot to piss me off. And probably what pisses me off more than anything is just stupid people. But when I've told them, if you ever hear, because I don't even realize I do it, but people that have worked for me for a long time said, if you ever hear Carey say, let me tell you something, it's fixing to get bad. Okay. And so the problem is it gets pretty nasty, but I've mellowed a little bit through the years, but I've never been that guy that was my way or the highway. I listened to my subs when I first came into the GC side. Company I worked for, we were a true self-perform contractor. Usually 60% of the employees on the job were my direct employees. And I learned a lot of things from some of the lowest paid, the most inexperienced guys. It's all common sense. But sometimes the more you know, you look at it in there's more to it than what it really is. But somebody doesn't know all the parts and pieces, that is standing back at 10 feet, and all of a sudden you say, why don't we do this? We all have impact. And now, as I tell my subs, I'll listen to you. And I said, but I make the ultimate decision. But you may not agree with my decision. But when we have our kickoff meetings, this is the analogy that I give all my subs. I said, all right, guys, here's how it works on my projects. I said, y'all are the orchestra. I'm the conductor. And there's some of these instruments that I can play as well as anybody. And there's some that I can get by on, and there's some you don't even want me to touch. But my job is to combine all of those instruments to make the best music in the world. Even though I may not be proficient at playing that one, and I'm really good at this one, I have to combine all of it. You as a subcontractor playing that one particular instrument, all you're worried about is that one instrument. And I have to put all of them together. So I'm looking at it from that perspective, and it makes sense to them.
You're the second person in, I think, 2 months to mention an orchestra and a conductor on this podcast. And I used to have the best superintendent I ever worked with was a self-proclaimed hillbilly from the mountains of West Virginia. He wore a neon yellow shirt and bib overalls every single day of his life. And he used to tell me all the time, Hoots, it's just like classical music. I get one note going, and then I bring another note in, and then before you know it, I've got a symphony, and then I got the grand finale, and it's a beautiful thing, and we make it happen. And every day when I'd come in, he'd be smoking a cigar in the trailer, of course, listening to classical music, and that's a memory that I'll always have. Like you said, when you were pulling information from Keith and how Keith works, I think Perry Nicholson is the gentleman I'm talking about. I've pulled a lot of tricks from what he did, just an old school builder that did things right. So I love where we're at. We're past the time actually, and that's awesome. I got to get you back on here for another one, but I'd love to just give you the table and anything you want to say, however you want to cap it out. The table's yours. Let them have it.
Well, like I said, with the construction has changed. How it was done when I first came into it, I learned to trade as a craftsman. There was a period of time I had a tool belt around my waist, and I was the guy putting the work in place. The newer generation are your college educated construction science guys. Most of them never even picked up a tool before. And there's nothing wrong with that. Book learning is an absolute theory. It's a straight line from A to B. In the real world, there's a wiggle here and there. And my challenge is teaching the guys how to work through the wiggles. But without having that on-hand experience, that benefited me when it came to being able to do scheduling, knowing how the parts and pieces. So the younger generation, my young superintendents and guys, they're easy to get engaged in the lean. The culture of the older guys, even here at BE&K, the challenge are the guys that's been doing it for 20 years, 25, 30 years. The guys that have that badge of honor of, oh, I worked 84 hours last week. And that's just a cultural deal because that's how it used to be. Sun up to dark, 7 days a week. And there was a pride in that I'm a bad man because I'm working 84 hours a week. I'm a bad man too, but I can do the same thing you do in 48 hours a week. And I spend the rest of the time with my wife and my grandkids and my kids. And I'm not stressed out. I get tired. There's some days now, don't get me wrong, I spend more time on the highway because I've got Texas. Texas is a big state. It's not just 30 minutes from here to there. Month of July, I spent, I think, 96 hours of windshield time that month, plus probably putting 40 plus hours a week on the job site. And that's just running from job to job. Because I've got one job that's 6 hours from this one. The other one's 2 hours this way, 3 hours that way. Lean is the way. I still have a lot to learn. What I know about it is just what I've always done. And it just happens to fall in with what the principles are. And I'm glad to see BE&K really want to engage. We're going to have our challenges, but to me, it's exciting. And that's what I like about this business is to be able to take a schedule, massage it, change it, redirect it, and at the end of the day, know that you made it happen. That's the satisfaction. I'm the guy that does what can't be done. 74 million, 10 months, and that's turnkey. And my punch list, we're going to have a few tile or a little touch-up paint. But on that $74 million job, I had 5 days. That's what it took to finish the punch list. And that was most of the time waiting on the sub to show up to do his work. But if you do your lean principles right, you minimize your punch list. You maximize your profit. And that's what it's all about, is making money.
It's all about people because that's what lean builders do. You heard it here. Curious George working out wiggles. I love it, man.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in New Orleans here in about 3 or 4 weeks.
I will absolutely be there. I'll tell you that. You got my word. And I want to see you on the job site. I want to come visit your project side. I can get excited about New Orleans and introducing you to the whole lean crew, but I'm even more excited about putting boots on the ground and just seeing what all awesome things you're doing and how we can just scale that excellence, not just through BE&K, but through the industry, because you're doing some
I
awesome
really like engaged in the lean community. I think I can bring some value to it.
I know you can. There's no thinking about it. Again, just what I've heard today, and I'm sure that millions of other things you're doing. We've got to have another conversation. I look forward to meeting you in person and spending a lot of time with you here in a couple months. Next month.
Yeah.
Sweet.
All right.